Welcome to the Attractions Group podcast. I'm Ryan Sir. With me, as always, is Don Helbig, and this is episode 94. Don, we're eking closer to 100 episodes now.
We are. Ryan, have you given any thought to what we should do for episode 100?
I figure we should just replay episode 1, and then we take the week off.
No, we don't want anyone to listen to episode 1. Those first 4 or 5 episodes were just kind of practice runs for us, trying to figure out formats and, the sound levels and all those kind of things. So, I think if you start at number 5 or 6, if you have to go back, that's where I would go.
Yeah, we're not really going to do that. We'll do something for episode 100. Actually, I don't really know what we're going to do. So don't get too excited because it might just be another episode. Kind of like your birthday once you get older and it's just any other day.
Yeah, just another episode, right?
Yeah. So,
if you're looking at the Attractions Group podcast, lots of places where you can listen to us, all your favorite podcast apps. We're talking Apple, Spotify, and the others. You want to watch on YouTube, be sure to subscribe, follow us on X. It's attractions_GRP, and definitely subscribe again to our YouTube channel. Ryan, what we got going on tonight?
So we've got an episode that we've had in the works for, I guess it's coming up on almost a month now. And this is a company that's, it's not a roller coaster manufacturer and it's not flat ride, stuff like that. I guess some would argue that this one's a little obscure, but what they do is, first of all, very interesting. And second of all, you're probably very familiar with a lot of the projects that they've done. So I want to welcome a couple of members of 3dxScenic out of Blue Ash, Ohio to the stage. So we got Rachel and Mark. So why don't you two introduce yourselves and tell us what your function is within the company. Mark, why don't we start with you?
Sure. My name's Mark Rosenzweig. I'm the Principal and Chief Business Officer for 3dxScenic. And as many people in our industry know, titles don't mean a lot, especially when you're in a small business. It's kind of all hands on deck. But chiefly, I'm over our sales and marketing initiatives and just, communications with our client base and working as well with our project managers and our entire team to keep things streamlined.
Okay. And Rachel?
My name is Rachel Claxton. I'm the charge scenic artist and also a project manager here at 3DX. So my job is kind of twofold. So on one hand, I'll run projects, start to finish, talk to clients, kind of figure out, the execution of their designs. But then I also run the paint shop along with my staff. So all of the cool, fun visual magic I get to do to be a part of a lot of that.
So talk a little bit about 3dxScenic. Where is it located and what exactly do you do?
Well, we're just about located where 275 Loop and I-71 crisscross on the northeast side of Cincinnati in the Blue Ash community. And we are a full-service scenic fabrication shop. So we've got many, many disciplines under our roof here, ranging from custom fabrication, scenic art. We've got a composite shop where we have fiberglass, and we also shoot hard coat, either polyurea or polyurethane. We also have a whole CNC division here, including 4 flatbed routers. And we have a KUKA 7-axis robot, which is probably our most fun electronic toy, if I had to say. And then just harking back to old school fabrication, we still have a wood shop that goes along with our metal shop. So yeah, we kind of combine a lot of everything under one roof, along with large format print services as well.
Now, already going off on a tangent here, you said it's a KUKA robot?
Yes.
Is that how it's pronounced? Now, that is the technology in Harry Potter and the Forbidden Journey, if I'm not mistaken.
Basically, yeah. So, I suppose we can duct tape an office chair to the end of our arm and you can pretend you're riding that. But it is essentially the same technology they used on that attraction, yes.
Well, I don't necessarily think that they duct taped anything, but nonetheless, that you sparked my mind when you said that company name because I knew I had heard of them before. So yeah. So let's begin with you, Mark, since you're in the more authoritative position. Not that titles matter, but give us a brief history of 3dxScenic.
Well, we were founded in 1999, and historically, 3dxScenic up until last fall, was owned by two separate live event production companies. So 3DX served as the in-house scenic shop for producing sets for live events. From 1999 through 2018, it was for Iacano Productions, which was based here in Blue Ash. And then in I think it was late 18 or early 19, Live Technologies in Columbus, Ohio, purchased Iacano Productions along with 3DX. And so both companies folded under, basically became part of Live. And then last year, just through circumstances, Matt Waldenmeyer, who's been a team member at 3DX for over 20 years, and myself took over ownership of 3DX. So as of October of last year, for the first time, 3dxScenic became its own independent business and operation.
Very cool.
So how did each of you get involved with 3dxScenic? And we'll start with you, Rachel.
Yeah, so a lot of my career was spent in theater. I went to school in Chicago, freelance there for a while, did mostly theater, some TV, some film, a little bit of themed entertainment, but honestly not much. And then once I decided to kind of get out of the theatrical world, it sort of just fell into it, found 3DX. I was living in Louisville at the time, doing some haunted houses and that kind of stuff, and transitioned into a full-time position with 3DX. And the cool thing was I was able to like take all of the skills that I had done in theater and television and film, you know, the past 10, 12 years, and transfer them into the entertainment roller coaster kind of world.
Mark?
Yeah, so for me, I've been in the attractions industry since 1998. I worked at Michigan's Adventure. I was on the team that opened Shivering Timbers, the wooden coaster up there that most roller coaster enthusiasts would be familiar with. And then that led into a career in sales and marketing, selling for various ride manufacturers. And then eventually it led me here to Cincinnati when in 2020, when the COVID pandemic kind of flipped a lot of people's careers on their heads and people had to make quick pivots. So I found 3DX and came out, interviewed, and they were interested in growing their external project portfolio because at the time, most of the work was coming from inside for doing live event scenic projects. So I was brought in to grow more of the projects that we do for theme parks and experiential design agencies and architects and those type of things. So that's how I landed here.
So getting into the nitty gritty of stuff, let's talk about some of the projects that 3DX has been involved with. Obviously, a lot of the stuff that you're excited about now is stuff that you probably can't talk about because it's future projects. But can we talk about some of the projects that that you're particularly proud of that are public and that people can go see right now? Let's start with you, Rachel.
Yeah. So the coolest thing I think I've ever done in my career, theater, anything, is a project that we did sort of actually right in the middle of COVID. We worked with SeaWorld and Sesame Place to retheme all of their Aquatica Park in San Diego, which was just like the coolest thing I've ever done. Going from, a park that had a completely different theme. We did sculpts, we did facades. So we made an entire area of the park look like the Sesame Street set. So it was really cool because we were able to go to the Sesame Street set and work with their designers and work with their team to make sure that everything looked exactly like the TV show. So all of the guests really sort of recognize everything that you see. From a paint perspective, that was so detailed and there were so many colors and so complicated that was something that I really enjoyed. It stretched for, we did that project for years with a little pause in between. So it was something that, when you like put a ton of work into something and the result is like better than you could have expected, that was that project for me. It was so much work, but the clients were so happy. We were so happy. And it just was really cool.
That's awesome. Mark, do you have anything that comes to mind?
Yeah, well, I was going to comment that project that Rachel was discussing, the largest in 3DX's history. And besides the project on a whole, I think I got to visit the park after it had opened. It was about 3 or 4 months into its season. And just seeing how seamless the transition from being a well done but generic tropical themed water park, which, let's face it, there are dozens and dozens of water parks themed that way across the country, into the second official Sesame Place park, the first one being in Langhorne, PA, just north of Philadelphia. It was just masterful. I know PGAV was part of the master planning for that. And as usual, they just knocked it out of the park. And so when you walk in there now, there's really no way you would know that park just a year prior was Aquatica. And just the layout of everything, the rides are in one area, then it kind of, blends into the water attractions. And then the signature piece of Sesame Place is the neighborhood. And that's where we created Big Bird's Nest, and several times a day, Big Bird comes out with a cast member and they do story time. And it's just so cool to see the kids all gather around with their parents and families and friends and take part in that. That's really what it's all about. For me and Rachel, I won't speak for you, but just seeing the reactions of guests after we put so much time and effort into a project, to see the positive reactions and see people making memories makes everything worth it. And that's why we do what we do.
Mark and Rachel, how do the projects come to be that you get involved with? Do the parks approach you? Do you approach the parks and say, hey, I have an idea for you? How does that come to be?
It's a little bit of both. I'm in communication with our client base. So, I'm at least staying in front of them so that they know we're here, and so if a project comes up that could use our services, they know they can reach out to us. Other times we will get a call, from an agency or a design firm. A lot of times we're subcontracted. So our product is part of a larger package. And those are typically the projects we can't talk about because we're under NDA for those. But I would say it's probably 2/3 us reaching out to the parks and about 1/3 parks and clients just calling us for stuff.
And to piggyback off of you, Mark, sometimes clients will come to us with a fully formed idea of exactly what they want. And they're just looking for somebody to facilitate the execution of that. And then other times people will come and say, that's kind of what I want. I think we want something. We know we want something in this part. Or like, hey, we have some intellectual property that we need to work with. But we have clients come to us with all ends of the spectrum of like knowing what they do or don't want, which is really cool because then we can come in at every part of the process. We don't have to start at the design phase. You don't have to come to us with a fully formed design. So it helps us like reach out to a bunch of different people as opposed to like one particular type of client.
Yeah, we like to be like a Swiss Army knife, basically. We like to be that jack of all trade problem solver, essentially. We want our clients to call us with a concept, like Rachel said, even if it's just like Holiday World's a great example. They had this project that just opened, Good Gravy Family Coaster. And it was close to 2 years ago. We started conversations with them and they kind of knew what they wanted, but they hired us to do the full design for that, the conceptual design. So we went through several rounds of that. And those creative decks is what basically is the product that you see at Holiday World now in what they call Stuffing Springs, which is the name of the park area that surrounds the coaster. That's how that came to be.
So I wasn't going to bring up Good Gravy, but since you did, that's a project that probably hits home for geographically, a lot of our listener base here. So Good Gravy is the new Vekoma family boomerang in Santa Claus, Indiana at Holiday World. And Don and I got to attend the media day, which is where we knew you, Mark, but we connected with you there, Rachel. So overall, very positive, but we can all agree that Good Gravy is not just a ride. It's an experience. Obviously that there were huge hand in 3DX had a huge hand in that saying and the output of it. But I'm going to let you guys decide who gets to answer this or who gets to go first. But talk about the experience working with Holiday World. How was that?
Rachel, I'll let you go because
you can air out all the laundry you want.
I love Holiday World. They're so nice. They're super enthusiastic. I feel like it's going to sound sort of cheesy, but like every single person I talked to at Holiday World was really excited about the project. And that actually just kind of made it really easy. Every project is like, oh, we have to do this, we have to do that. But across the board, it was like, everybody was just really jazzed about what the end outcome was going to be. So, I mean, in terms of working with them, it was cool because, like Mark was saying, they had kind of an idea of what they wanted. And so they said, this is what the ride is going to be. This is our concept. And then we kind of got to run with it a little bit. They presented us some research images. We came back with some other research images. So it was really sort of collaborative experience. And then our design department was able to pull together a bunch of, options and sketches and renderings and things like that, provided them with a ton of options. And then Holiday World was able to go back and say, like, okay, we think this is going to be the best for what we want. We think this is going to be the best for what we want, and figure out what sculpts they wanted where. So it was great. Like I said, it sounds really cheesy, but they're all real nice people over there.
And on a ride like Good Gravy, what's interesting is the visuals are not like a normal coaster, because you're traveling the same course twice. You're going forward and then traveling in reverse. So the placement of these sculpts and where they're going to go, because they wanted the sculpts to be visible from the ride, as well as being unique photo ops for guests down on the ground, either those not tall enough to ride or not wanting to ride. It truly did become a real immersive subland, essentially, in Thanksgiving. And I think it's going to prove to be one of the best investments overall that the park's made. It's one of the largest investments in the dry park in quite some time, maybe since they put in the B&M launch wing coaster. So I think it's going to balance the park out really well this year, because the water park really is their bread and butter. But now I think this is going to lead to longer length of stay, which is very critical for park success, for per capita spending and all that. So there's a lot of good coming with Good Gravy, I think.
Yeah, the attention to detail with Good Gravy, it's amazing. Some of the best work that I've ever seen in all my years of going to amusement and theme parks. But I want to know who came up with the idea for the giant cooking props. That just really elevates the experience, and I just was just mesmerized looking at all the different props that were out there. But who came up with those things?
So that idea came from Holiday World. They knew what they wanted. They wanted these oversized, cooking sculpts. But then, like I said earlier, we then worked together to figure out exactly what they were. So I have in my head, a bunch of the options that we didn't choose as well. I think the ones that we chose fit perfectly for like the locations and give you the exact kind of idea. And then the other kind of cool thing about the ideas coming from Holiday World is that they wanted to put some Easter eggs in. So, for example, you've got the milk bottle, which has the Coke dairy logo on it. That is the actual dairy logo from the family from forever ago. So we were able to do a bunch of research and find that, so that we could, hide that as a little Easter egg in, as opposed to just a standard like milk bottle. So it has a particular tie to the area. And then the stuffing box, which is my baby and the thing that I am the most proud of, is it's Ruth's stuffing, because the woman who created sort of the Stouffer's like big stuffing is from the area where the park is, and so it was just a little nod to location history and things like that. So we got to put some cool Easter eggs in.
And also, I'll just say our paint team, that this is some of the greatest scenic work that I've ever seen. That's all hand painted. Everything you see on that stuffing box, that is not a vinyl wrap, which 99 out of 100 projects would be today, for budgetary or other reasons. The Holiday World team was insistent that this is a hand painted piece, and it is on full display. You could see it from the walkway as you're walking up towards Thunderbird from the Good Gravy area, and just masterful. And you might be asking why one of the lids missing here, because we were getting it prepped to ship, couldn't ship it with the lid down like that, so it was put back on after it got to the park.
Oh, that's fascinating. I try to have conversations with different people in different facets of the industry, and I often talk out of turn. But Rachel, I was talking to you. I remember this conversation. We were looking at this. We weren't looking at it in your shop, as this photo implies, but we were looking at the roller here, and I was like, "Oh man, this must have been terrible to paint this, because there's so many little details." And I assumed your answer was going to be like, "Yeah, I had to hand stencil every one, and it took 6 weeks and stuff." But you're like, No, actually, I just found the right roller and it was perfect. So let me ask you this. I'm going to ask this as an open-ended question because obviously I don't know the answer. But what are some of the challenges that you not received, but that you experienced with this particular project, with the Good Gravy project? What are some of the challenges that were kind of unique to this project?
Honestly, at least from a paint perspective, right, is scale. So normally as a scenic artist, right, you're doing things on a regular size scale. So wood grain is always kind of about the same size, right? Bricks are pretty standard size. But with this in particular, the rolling pin, we had to scale the wood grain up. So I had to think, okay, this is how I would do it normally if it's supposed to be like, a couple inches by a couple inches. So I had to totally change my materials and my thought process. So it was a lot of sampling. But yeah, like you said, I ended up just finding a particular roller. It's called a check roller. It's a bunch of like metal wheels with cuts out of them. And then you just roll it on and it gave this beautiful wood grain texture. And so I added that in to a bunch of layers that I did. So it was scale. And I think scale in general, not just in a parent perspective, but also, some of these sculpts are 15 feet tall. So maneuvering them, getting the coatings nice and solid and lovely, and making sure that really just everything fit together in its pieces. Because, if you're building something small, you can kind of make sure that everything fits exactly how it's supposed to fairly easily. But with this big stuff, it takes a lot of effort to put it together in full. So luckily for us, our shop is large enough that we were able to put all of the pieces together in full so that not only we could make sure that everything worked, but also so that Holiday World could see everything in advance. Because that's something that we really like to do in general, is to make sure that the client knows exactly what they're going to get. So we always send a ton of photos and stuff like that. But because we were able to, put these huge things together, nobody was surprised when they pulled stuff off the truck, which is great. It's exactly what you want.
Now, Rachel, following up a little bit on that, what was your process for making the paint on these large props look realistic compared to the real ones? For example, did you have to play any tricks, like unrealistically emphasizing some of the features?
Yeah, so this one we did a little bit of trompe painting, not too much because it was like a really lovely graphic design, so that really helped. But exactly for the wood grain, it was the process that we do is I like to make sure that the client has approved what that paint process is going to be. So we were able to do, I think they were like 3 foot by 3 foot samples, and send them out to Holiday World so that they could see exactly what they were going to get. There's this actually really cool photo that Holiday World posted on their Instagram a little while back that is all of the paint samples sitting in the construction site where the coaster and all of the props are going to be. So it was like a little teaser that they did. But in terms of the paint process, we sent those samples out to them. They approve them, or they say, hey, we want to tweak this. But it helps us figure out what we're going to do in advance too. So it helps us kind of speed it along on the back end, since we've already figured out the process and made those decisions. But we had to do a little bit of extra shading and highlighting, especially on the whisk. Because if you just paint something silver, it doesn't have that sort of dimension, even though an actual whisk is just metal. There's no highlights and shadow on that. We were able to the dimension of it a little bit, so it just looks more dynamic in the park, as opposed to if we had just done something that was one solid color.
And I'll add also that for any project to be successful, it has to be a partnership, and their team was just so proactive and ahead of things. They were ahead of schedule on almost every aspect of this project. And that's Andrew Boland, who's their maintenance construction manager, Eric Snow, who was our main contact. He's a chief marketing officer, I believe, and Lauren Crosby as well were our main contacts as the project started. And everything just went so smoothly, and everything was on time. And, from the coaster installation to the sculpts being installed. So that it was really a breath of fresh air to go through that and have everything happen on time.
So, when Holiday World announced this, there was the animation, and we all knew that there was, when I say we all, I mean me and Don, because you guys probably knew a little bit more than us, but the average person knew that the queue was going to be something interesting. But discussing the ride as an experience as a whole with you guys, like, I think you guys are in the same plane as Don and I, where, the ride is part of this big, giant experience that you walk into, and it's one of the many moving parts. I think that they're onto something special. I don't think that anybody would disagree with me. The first time that you got to experience Good Gravy, how did it feel to know that you and your company had a part in this? Let's start with you, Mark.
It's a thrill. I mean, on a personal level, the last project that I was involved with at Holiday World was Hollow Swings. And I actually worked with Will Cook himself on that project. So the park has a special place in my heart. It always has. So going into their new edition this year and walking the queue, I think Rachel and I had several moments we were cracking up at some of those, the screens with Grandma and Grandpa going through various speeches and then freezing back in their face. It was very, very well done. They were also very fortunate, that station building is way oversized for a Vekoma family boomerang. So the fact that they were able to repurpose it so well from the former water ride that was there, maximizing it really. And not only that, it gives them a queue that, might hold 40 minutes or even an hour of people, I'm not sure, in air conditioning, because you know how hot it gets down there in that area of the country, as it is here as well in the middle of summer. So yeah, I mean, just being part of that is, it really is a thrill professionally and personally.
And
Rachel?
we touched on this a little bit earlier. We were talking about Sesame Place in San Diego, but we were there for Media Day, and so I was able to just kind of like watch everybody else go, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, and sort of like see the details that we had put in, the details that the park had put in, because the park did some theming and they did a great job with that too. Like, it's just beautiful, and so I felt really proud of it. It's one of my larger, more recent projects as a project manager. So it was very cool to see everything, come together fully. There's always something really nice about, oftentimes I will put stuff on a truck and I will never see it again if I'm not part of the install team. So if I get photos or things like that from a client, like, that's great. But I'm not always on site. And so to be able to actually see people interact with it was really cool. And to see like kids taking photos with the chicken timer, which is just absolutely adorable, is something that I don't often get to experience as somebody that is primarily in the shop. So it was really, really special.
And, Holiday World, while being an amazing park, doesn't have that single iconic structure like Kings Island's Eiffel Tower or Magic Kingdom Park Cinderella Castle. It doesn't have that spot that every family takes photos. They have some photo ops around the park, but some of these scopes I think are just iconic, and they're going to prove to be iconic over time. And so I can foresee a lot of families taking that photo every year at the kitchen timer and just watching their kids grow. And it might sound corny, but that's a cool thing as well. It's kind of, they have that Santa Claus photo op near the entrance, but otherwise, that I think that's going to be what that leads to.
Yeah, I saw a lot of the people that were attending Media Day getting a photo in front of that chicken timer as well. But when you look at Good Gravy, it's not a ride. It's really an experience, and the different elements that you guys put in place there. How important do you think that is moving forward in the future as parks look to put in new attractions to make it more of an experience than just a ride?
Well, we certainly hope that the parks look at an example like Good Gravy, because it definitely is. Like, we sell, what I always say is, we sell beautiful artistic work, right? So it is, it's abstract. So an accountant or a CPA has a hard time sometimes with what fabrication is, because there's not always a direct return on investment for what we do. Whereas you could say, okay, we're going to spend 4.5 million euros or dollars or whatever on this ride, and then we have a direct data point that we can measure against attendance increase or length of stay or that. But I firmly believe, and I've said this for a long while, this is before I was even in the scenic side of the industry, that I've always felt more at home at parks like Silver Dollar City and Dollywood and Disneyland, and even parks like Knoebels that just create unique, immersive experiences. It makes me want to spend more time there. And when you spend more time there, it's been proven that, spend is going to go up as well. And that's, at the end of the day, this is a business for fun. But, so I definitely foresee this as a thing. I mean, you're seeing the regional theme park chains now putting more and more money investment into theming. You look at recent projects at Kings Island and Carowinds and even Six Flags too. I mean, they're getting on this theming train. So I think the future is bright for this type of initiative.
It also gives people who don't particularly like coasters, right? So they're non-riders, or they're there for their family. I mean, it gives them something to do in the park, like to be entertained by, as opposed to, okay, well, I'm just going to kind of hold the coats while you guys go on the ride. I think that's cool because it envelops like the rest of the people that are there, as opposed to people that are just there, not just there, but primarily there for the ride. Also, if you're putting theming in queue lines can be really long, right? And so it gives you something to do, right? And something to be entertained by and be a part of that world while you're waiting for, the ride itself, as opposed to the ride itself being the only experience.
Yeah, I'd like to think that the days of giant concrete slab switchback queues are hopefully behind us. A lot of these things are driven by budget, of course, but whenever you can implement some kind of story, it's like anything else. Like, we all need daily purpose in our lives. Why is this attraction here? There should be a story or a purpose or a reason why we're doing this. So I think the recipe's there. I'm using the word recipe for a Thanksgiving theme ride, but I think it's going to prove tremendously successful. And because of Holiday Worlds, people watch them. They are an innovative park. They introduce things like, the soft drink plan, where they included that with admission. So, I mean, people, this is not to be taken lightly. It's going to be front and center, and people will take note of it.
All right, question for each of you, and we'll start with you, Rachel. Good Gravy is not available. What is your favorite attraction ride at Holiday World?
Oh man, Mark introduced me to a coaster there, and Mark, you are going to have to remind me of the name, because I still think that I'm a little shocked by it, so I don't remember.
When you go on a long trip, you go on a
vacation.
You should just tell me.
The Voyage.
Voyage. Thank you. Okay. So I went on the Voyage for the first time. I had never been to Holiday World before, and I could not speak after that coaster. I think I just sort of like I had to go get water because it was such an intense ride. That was so much fun. It was such a good coaster. And I know they've been replacing a ton of track. So I've been told it's much smoother than it used to be. But we had a great time, and I got to ride front row, which is like the coolest experience. So if Good Gravy is not available, I'll be going on the Voyage.
Mark?
Yeah, for up until this year, I would have had Thunderbird as my favorite. It's just the most re-rideable coaster in the park, and really impressive launch on it. And I wasn't the biggest wing coaster fan, but back in 2015, when I rode it for the first time, it really, really surprised me. It blew me away. But now I would go to Voyage, given the work they put into it. It's the signature ride of the park. I mean, there's no way around that. And it's arguably the most epic wooden coaster in the world. To me, it's the Beast V2. I mean, it's Beast using AutoCAD, which they did not have in 1978, 79. So the Beast could have been just as aggressive if they had those tools at their disposal, but they had to design it a little more in a conservative mindset, because a lot of the questions were, what is this even going to work? And both rides, we're just lucky to have them both so close to us here in the Midwest.
I agree with you about about the Voyage. I've ridden it pretty much every year since its debut, and the best that it has ever run on the times I've ridden it was during the media event there.
Mm-hmm.
I have one runner up that I will not be able to sleep if I don't mention. The dark ride, the Gobbler Getaway, that is the most beautiful dark ride I've ever seen. During media day, no joke, we went on it like 4 times. It speaks to my little scenic artist heart. That is like such a great example um, of beautiful painting and scenic art and design making that entire project, because for the most part the scenery is just like flats. So it, relatively inexpensive fabrication wise, but it is beautiful and gorgeous. I went home and told all of my staff about it and said, you gotta look at it, you gotta look at it. That is, yeah, that's a great dark ride.
And so now I have a new mission. Besides, I love riding coasters with Rachel because she has the best coaster laugh I have ever heard. Like you ride a coaster and she's just laughing through the whole ride. It's fantastic. But now we have to go on a dark ride tour, because if you thought Gobbler Getaway, I mean, that's a great ride. That's from Sally Corp in Jacksonville. But, there's many epic dark rides across the country. So I think we have to put that on the list for this year, Rachel.
Yeah, dark rides are awesome. Have you been to like Disney World and seen those dark rides, Rachel?
Oh yeah, I have. I lived in Florida for a little while, so I definitely am familiar with all of those. I think just I did not expect that. I didn't know really much about that ride before I got on it and was like, oh, this is great. So yeah, the dark rides are particularly beautiful, especially if they're going to be fluorescent and so detailed like that one.
Yeah, that's a hidden gem at Holiday World.
And nice to have something in air conditioning.
Yeah, right. I know, right? And I feel like it's long for that size of park. I feel like it's a pretty long dark ride. Square footage of the park to dark ride distance. I think the ratio is pretty good. All right, one last question. Let's start with you, Rachel, because I feel like this question will probably be more in line with people that are interested in this. But if you were interested in going into scenic design, set building, stuff like that, what advice would you have for somebody that's maybe starting college or whatever that may be interested in doing what you do?
So for me, I came from a theatrical background. And one of the things that I didn't realize until I was probably 5 or 6 years out of school is that all of those things that you learn as a scenic design student, as a scenic artist, when you're in theater, because that's what you're going to get your degree in if you're going that route, is going to be primarily theatrically focused. All of that applies to the world of themed entertainment and coasters. The opportunities for you are so much bigger than just theater or film or television. All of those are great avenues, but there's so much other stuff that you can do with it, particularly in parks. So I think that's something that I didn't learn until a little bit later into my career when I came to 3DX. So if I'm going to give anybody some advice, that's what I would say is look at the skills that you've got, and what interests you and what can you do with those skills. Because that's what led me to be here. And I find this work just so enjoyable and very cool. And, I said this earlier that like, there's nothing like watching somebody interact. A particular thing that I really like is when I tell somebody like, oh yeah, that piece of scenery, oh, that's just like wood, plywood and steel. And they're like, but it looks like marble or brick or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, I know. That's because I did my job. So I think that's pretty cool. So yeah, I think just think larger than just the theatrical world. That's what I would suggest.
Mark?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big proponent of getting your hands dirty. Go out there. If you want to work in the industry, get a job at a park, get any job, any entry level job, whether it's in park services and you're sweeping the midways and cleaning the restrooms, move your way up, be curious, always take on new tasks, learn. When you work at a park, you're essentially a citizen in a city. That's kind of the mantra at Silver Dollar City, where team members are called citizens, but you're working in different departments. There's finance, there's operations, there's group sales, there's just get yourself immersed in that. And then IAPA, or the International Association of Amusement Parks and Attractions, has their annual expo that's in Orlando every November. It's the week before Thanksgiving week, and they have an ambassador program. And if you go to www.iaapa.org, you can find out more about that just by doing a search through there. But that's really a good way, because you get in there with like-minded people trying to get into the industry, and you beginning to see the back of house, which is very important, because it's just like a restaurant. It's not all pretty all the time, but learning every aspect of it. And just again, like Rachel said, like what we do here, we have one of the most skilled teams, I believe, in the industry. Whether it's our carousel horse sculpts that we did at Lake Compounce in Kennywood, the parade floats we did for Cedar Point's 150th anniversary parade, the Grand Carnival parade, the Sesame Street street party parade. We have projects everywhere, and people are amazed at how is it these materials can look like that. Well, it's people that have worked hard. They've gone through, they've gotten experience, they've worked in different industries, and it all translates to what we do. And we're just thrilled to be here, and we're looking forward to our continued growth in the future.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, thank you guys both for being on the show. It's really been a fascinating conversation. Let's just really quickly, so people know, like, have a little bit more of a base. What are some of the other theme park projects that 3DX has done? You don't have to go into detail. Just list them off, just so people get a bigger feel for your scope of work.
Sure. So more recent, we've done large and small projects for groups like Palace. So and Rachel, you actually project managed that. We did a wishing well that was a retail fixture inside the gift shop at Dutch Wonderland in Lancaster. It's a small piece, but it really filled out the space nicely. Iconic, the carousel horse sculpts that were done for Kennywood and Lake Compounce are the largest carousel horse sculpts in the world. They stand 15 feet tall. They're 17-foot front hoof to tail. They're just spectacular. Those are the kind of photo op pieces that we really, again, don't have that direct return on investment. But, when guests take photos with the park name behind that sculpt and the family there, I mean, there's that, the social media marketing mileage, it goes forever, essentially. And the Sesame Place San Diego project was just tremendous. It was almost a 2.5-3 year project, converting an entire park. We do a lot of our more recent projects we unfortunately can't talk about, but we work in all facets of fiberglass and composites, whether it's for ride vehicles or sculpts and signage and portals and all that kind of stuff. So we've got several exciting projects that are in works now that, maybe Rachel and I can come back on and chat with you guys a little more about next year.
It'd be fascinating.
We'd love that. All right. Well, Mark, Rachel, again, appreciate your time tonight. Thanks for joining us. Stick around for the Pick Six.
Thanks, everybody.